What is up, everybody? Welcome to another weekend roundup here on Touchline Talk. So much to get into, but before I jump in, as always, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of the content I put out every single week. I said on last week's weekend roundup, it was not time to change the conversation about the Premier League title race. It was not time to change the conversation about Arsenal until the Southampton game happened. Then the Southampton game happened. Arsenal dropped 2 more points. Arsenal had to come from behind to get a point at home against the worst team in the Premier League. And now it's time to change the conversation because the math has changed. That was my big thing last week, is the math really hadn't changed much at all. Now, you don't come away from that Manchester City game coming up if you get a draw feeling good about it. You only feel good if you get a win on the road against Manchester City. That's a very different situation to be in than knowing if you just avoid losing, you're still in control. Arsenal are no longer in control of this thing. Now, they can take back control by winning this game at the Etihad. But nobody's going to back them to do that, considering their form, considering City's form, and considering just City's at home. That's not a game you're supposed to win, even if you are the best team in the league. They gave themselves enough of a cushion. They were fine until this Southampton game. And then there's also the mental part of this, which is, had you just taken care of Southampton, you would have felt much better heading into this game. Instead, you're kind of in desperation mode, and this game became even more important than it already was. Because now, to me, you have to win it if Arsenal is going to go on and win the league. So it changed in a big, big way because of this draw. I'm not going to get into the game itself, the scoreline, the way it unfolded, the goals Arsenal conceded. It's all there. I continue to be stubborn with this team. I don't want to give in to this narrative that City are going to go take this over. I resisted as long as I could. But that game was the turning point. Because mathematically, it is a very different equation now. Arsenal have one final opportunity, this game coming up at the Etihad, to change this equation. Otherwise, this is Manchester City's to lose. And this is the first time we've said that in a long, long time. Maybe even, you can argue it kind of got there when Arsenal slipped up, but I wouldn't even go that far. Since the season has really started playing out, this has been Arsenal's title to lose. And now we're very close to becoming Manchester City's. Speaking of Manchester City, both Manchester clubs advance to the FA Cup final. We're going to get a Manchester derby, Wembley style. City cruise against Sheffield United 3-0. Not too much to say there, other than I've made the point before, when it looked like Arsenal were going to win the league, City were in danger of leaving this season without a trophy. Now, we're at the end of April, and the treble is very much on the table. Final of the FA Cup. Right there in the Premier League title race. Pretty much everybody's favorites at this point. Semifinals of the Champions League. It really has kind of turned around for Manchester City here. And so now you've got an opportunity to go win an FA Cup on top of this rally they're making in the Premier League, on top of the Champions League. And Manchester United beat Brighton on penalties. It was not a good game. The goalkeepers made a couple good saves, but really this was a story of neither team created all that much. But it is United who go through eventually on penalties. Victor Lindelof converting the decisive one. And just like this has the opportunity to give Manchester City a treble, United's kind of the opposite in that if you get this one, you've got 2 trophies in Erik ten Hag's first season. And it's looking more and more like you're going to clinch top 4, which always kind of looked like it was going to be the case, but there were questions here or there. And certainly not at the beginning. I guess I should rephrase that a little bit. Didn't look like it at the beginning of the season the way it started. But once they got going, it was clear they were one of the 4 best teams in the league. But they've had some stumbles. And so now you're talking about, what will the legacy of this season be? 2 domestic cups, comfortable top four, feeling like you're heading in the right direction. You lose this game, and okay, you got top four kind of as expected. You won the Carabao Cup, but you lost to City in the FA Cup final. City went on to get the treble. You could have been the team to stop them. There's a very, outside of the obvious, there's a very interesting dynamic with this FA Cup final that I wanted to point out quickly, the way that this season is playing out for these two clubs. And then there's what happened to Spurs at St. James Park. It was stunning just how bad those opening 20 minutes were. And I really want to just hit home two main points here. First, any questions or hope that this club was somehow going to be able to turn this around, get it in the right direction, that there was a quick fix available for whoever the next manager is going to be, that they could have salvaged top four, all that is just gone. How in the world do you come back from this? Not only was this a massive game in the top four battle, but now you've got the mental part of this. For a team that clearly has not been able to demonstrate the mental fortitude needed here. None of this is new. The way it unfolded was jarring, but you can ask any Spurs fan how they feel about this season. You ask them, it's going to sound like this team is not even fighting for top four, and I don't blame them. I tend to agree with that sentiment. And the scary part is there is no reason to believe this is going to get better, and every reason to believe the competition is going to get even stiffer. When you look at what Newcastle just did to Spurs, what Newcastle are building, for better or worse, Newcastle are here with their money. You look at what Brighton has going, Manchester United aren't going anywhere, and this is a season in which Liverpool and Chelsea have been somewhere between disappointing to awful, and Spurs still are probably going to find themselves, barring a miracle, looking on the outside of the top four. Which leads me to the Harry Kane question. And to me, this is not even a question at this point. The only reason Spurs would keep Harry Kane past this season is for sentimental reasons. And that's not how you run a successful club. I'll put it that way. Unless Harry Kane begs to stay, and I just don't see that happening. Because Harry Kane has earned the right to do what he wants. If he wants to go, Spurs should let him go. He's earned that much. But we're to a point that this is in Spurs' best interest as well. Because how do you look at what is going on right now? How do you look at this result if you're Harry Kane and say, I think we're close. If I stick around, we're going to get the trophy eventually. I see progress being made. That's always been his thing. I will stay as long as I see progress. This is not progress. Obviously. What is he staying for? This club, you can go blame Daniel Levy, blame the players, blame Antonio Conte, blame all of them. This club has failed Harry Kane. And Harry Kane has been more than loyal to Spurs in return. If he's going to make a move, it should be now. And if you're Spurs, even though you have Harry Kane and have had Harry Kane in his prime, the best you've done is a magical Champions League run to the final, which, not trying to dismiss that, it also almost ended in the semis. Nobody really thought that Spurs team was, a top 5 team in the world. It all came together for him one time in the Champions League. And top 4 finishes. Right? This is a club that right now is a top 4 hopeful. trying to present itself as a title contender. And I have fallen for it in the past, and I am just not doing that anymore. They are not, that's not where they are. So your incentive to keep Harry Kane isn't all that high because, again, you're not close to getting where you want to be. And of course, there's value in keeping Harry Kane. He's one of the best players in the world. But Spurs know as well as anyone the benefit of selling a player of Harry Kane's caliber when you're not where you need to be and you're going to have to go rebuild, right? They're not a piece away. They're not 2 pieces away. So if you want to change the status quo, you got to do something because the big time managers haven't worked. Daniel Levy has opened the checkbook. Richarlison, Perisic, I know they're not spending Chelsea, Manchester City money, but they're behaving like a big club. And none of it's made a difference. They're in the exact same spot they always are. Disappointing, not realizing their potential, wasting Harry Kane's best years. So to change the status quo, you have to do something different. They're not going to go turn into Manchester City. I don't see a manager making that much of a difference, and especially one that's going to take this job. So your option is to move Harry Kane and go use that money to rebuild this thing. You're probably not a top 4 club next season anyway, even if Harry Kane is here. So it's in everybody's best interest to go your separate ways in the summer. That's where I've gotten to. I felt that way before this game, but certainly after this game. If you're Harry Kane, I just don't see how you can convince yourself the next season is going to be any different. And maybe he is just so loyal that it doesn't matter. But they're just not close to getting a trophy, and specifically the kind of trophy he wants. Of course, you could go win an FA Cup any season, you can go win a Carabao Cup any season. But he wants to be competing with the best. And Spurs just aren't giving him that opportunity. Spurs should let him go even if it was incredibly detrimental to them. But we're to the point where I don't see it as detrimental. I see it as beneficial to everyone. Because as great as he is, he can't cover over these cracks. You've got to address the cracks, and the best way to do that is with the money you get by selling Harry Kane. A few other things I want to touch on really, really quickly. Borussia Dortmund back atop the Bundesliga after Bayern have another meltdown. It's been bad under Tuchel. I would just be repeating the same things I've been saying since they fired Julian Nagelsmann and hired Thomas Tuchel. The one point I do want to make here, though, in terms of the title race, because it's easy to go say, oh, Bayern is still going to win this thing. And they very well may. But Dortmund do not have a challenging road game left, and that is where they have dropped points this season. We are close enough, that schedule is favorable enough that they very well may win out. And this thing is back in their control. And if you were to give Dortmund, I believe it's 5 games to see this thing out, you've got a point advantage. You're not worried about goal difference. Any day of the week, you take that. This is Dortmund's to lose now. Now, they very well may. You've got to see somebody actually beat Bayern to kind of believe it's going to happen. But this is you couldn't have asked for a better opportunity. It is completely in your control. The schedule is there for you. It's not like you're waiting to have to go to Leipzig or go to Bayern or something like that. 3 of your 5 are at home, and you're playing 2 teams in the bottom half of the table on the road. This is easily the most danger Bayern have been in probably a decade. Since the last time they didn't win the league. I'd have to go back and look at every single season, but this is, there are going to be some conversations to be had about Bayern after this season. because you make that managerial change, you have to win the league, because what you said is Nagelsmann couldn't do it. Or if he could, what he was doing wasn't good enough. And now Tuchel may leave with 0 trophies. Save the rest of that conversation for another day. The few other things I want to touch on. Napoli, big controversial win over Juventus. If anybody has a right to be frustrated with the way things played out, it's it's Napoli more than Juventus. So Juve did not get robbed here. That should have been a red card, and that's where the conversation begins with the refereeing. There were other controversies. Yes, Juventus could have had the goal. I get all that. Napoli have more of a gripe than Juventus do. And ultimately, they get the goal at the very end to get back on track, to really cement themselves. Congratulations, Napoli. You are so close to winning Serie A. Just got to see it out at this point. But that was another big kind of mental hurdle to climb, and another emotional blow that they dealt to everybody chasing them that would kind of, maybe if this thing spirals out of control, but they just went and beat Juventus. So Napoli back on track, close, controversial win over Juventus in Serie A. Also want to mention women's first leg of the Women's Champions League semifinals took place. Barcelona got an early goal, beat Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. Chelsea dealt with Barcelona fairly well, just didn't have anything going in attack, but still very much in the tie heading back into leg 2. And then Arsenal go down 2 to Wolfsburg, rally to get a 2-2 draw in Germany. This is a depleted Arsenal team that deserves all the credit in the world for the way that they handled this game and the way that they got back to 2-2 with the amount of players they are missing. Really good game, first of all, and really impressive performance from Arsenal. And then finally, everybody's favorite team, congratulations, Wrexham, headed to League 2 officially, gets that automatic promotion spot by winning the National League. I'm not going to go on a whole nother Wrexham rant, but I do want to say this. This is not the part of the story that's interesting. This is a club that had the ability to use charter planes to go to the longer road games, the farther away road games. When in the world does that happen in non-league? This is what should have happened. That's not to take anything away, because they have proven on the field both what they've done in the league and in the FA Cup. They are not a National League side, and neither are Notts County for that matter. But sticking with Wrexham here. They 100% deserve this because they're operating like a club that's bigger than non-league, because they are. And they are a team playing better than non-league because they are. It was a matter of when they were going to get promoted. They were going to put the money in until it happened. And it was a terrific title race. They found a way to persevere in the end. What happens next is the interesting part of this story. Okay, you're in League 2 now. They could very well go right through League 2, and I would not be stunned if they're a promotion candidate. I would not be stunned if they're automatically promoted next season. With knowing you have, a summer to rebuild, to reinforce this team further, that you've got extra incentive to double down financially and continue this climb, that was always going to be the interesting part of this story. Was not can they get into the league system. It's how far can they go? How far can Ryan Reynolds and Rob McElhenney take this team, take this club? Is it League 2? Is it League 1? Is it the championship? It's about the rise once you get there, because they were just never going to stay in the 5th tier. They showed you what they could do in the FA Cup. That's why I would not be stunned at all after they get to improve their squad even more if they're among the best teams in League 2 next season. It is a terrific story. We just got to put it in the proper context. They should be exactly where they are. They should have won this league just like they did. They did what they were supposed to. Congratulations. I want to know what happens next. That is all for the weekend roundup. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to hit that subscribe button. I'll see you next time.